Now we're going to talk about the different kinds of transportation, which include aircraft, railways, vehicles, and watercraft. We're going to start with aircraft. So there are many different kinds of military aircraft, ranging from planes and helicopters to drones and unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as UAVs. Military aircraft have been part of our country's military power since the mid-20th century. There is a total of 2,028 different kinds of military aircraft worldwide in history. There are 5 main categories of military aircraft. First, we have our fighters, which are used to destroy enemy aircraft and their attackers. Out of the 2,028 kinds of military aircraft worldwide, 702 are classified as fighter aircraft. We then have the bombers, which are engineered to make surface attacks using bombs and missiles, usually larger and harder to maneuver. We then have our transport and cargo. These are bigger bodied aircraft, big enough to carry supplies, troops, weapons, and equipment. We have drones, which are typically smaller aircraft and can be flown without a pilot or remotely. With a pilot or remotely, primarily used for surveillance and sometimes attackers. And then the helicopters, which are ground transportation used for support and normally for short distances, propelled by props by overhead. So now we're going to talk about civilian aircraft. There are 3 main categories of civilian aircraft. First, you have your private aircraft, which is privately owned by an individual and can be built at home from scratch or with kits. Then you have your business aircraft, which you normally would think would be a private aircraft. These are usually owned by businesses or individuals. They are small single-engine aircraft that can go short distances, or bigger up to 4-engine aircrafts that can cross oceans. And then you have your commercial aircraft, which is designed to carry passengers and freight from airport to airport on a scheduled basis. This is going to be your Delta Airlines, your American Airlines, any commercial airline that you would fly across the country through an airport. Next, we're going to talk about our railways. So, railway in the military. Militaries from around the world have been using trains for over 150 years, and they are an essential part for transporting troops, supplies, and weapons. During the Civil War, railroads became a new technology that created vital roles for the Union and the Confederate. This was the first conflict where railroads played major roles. It allowed transportation of mass amounts of supplies and troops in and out of an area quicker than ever before. In January of 1862, Congress authorized President Lincoln to seize use of any railways, creating the U.S. Military Railroads, or the USMRR, which is still in use today. After Pearl Harbor, during World War II, railroads were able to move approximately 2 million troops a month for deployment. They were crucial for hauling iron, coal, and steel, and were required to produce military supplies and weapons. Today, railroads are still a primary means of transportation during deployment. The different railroad comparison around the world is our freight railways and then our passenger rails. The U.S. rail network consists of 140,000 miles of track, both freight and passenger. The passenger railway is owned almost exclusively by Amtrak, which operates 26,356 miles of track, extending over 500 communities across the country. As a main source of transportation, railroads are essential in every country. The cost to maintain and upgrade railway systems continue to be a focus point in many countries. In 2016, Italy launched a 10-year railway system investment plan for 100 billion euros to build and repair the railways. In 2014, Great Britain announced a 5-year plan to invest £38 billion into their system. In 2013, Belgium approved a 25 billion euro investment over a 12-year period. And the United States funded $27.1 billion in 2015 for our railway system, and as of 2017 transports 5 million tons of freight and 85,000 passengers a day. The U.S. Department of Transportation predicts that 40% increase in all U.S. freight transportation by 2040. European Railway Performance Index, or the RPI, is a way to compare and grade railways in 3 different categories. One being the intensity of use. What extent is it being used by passengers versus freights? 2, the quality of service. Is it punctual, on time, fast, and affordable? And 3, the safety. How they adhere to the top safety standards. So this is a graph of the 2017 European Railway Performance Index. They receive a score based on a 1 to 10 scale and are placed in one of 3 tiers. Tier 1 being an RPI of 6 to 10, which includes Switzerland, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Austria, Sweden, and France. Then you have your Tier 2 with an RPI of 4.5 to 6, including Great Britain, Netherlands, Spain, Czech Republic, Norway. And then you have Tier 3, which is an RPI lower than 4.5. And these are smaller countries and Ireland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Portugal. And you will notice that the United States is not going to be on this because this is the European Railway Index. So we were not, or the United States is not graded based on this system. Then we get into our high-speed railways. High-speed railway is qualified for traveling speeds faster than 125 miles per hour. Japan was the first country to introduce high-speed railway systems when they launched their bullet train in 1964. Japan has the busiest high-speed rail service in the world, carrying more than 420,000 passengers daily, reaching speeds of 198 miles per hour. And to this day, there are no recorded fatalities or injuries due to an accident in their 50 years of operation, which is pretty cool. France was the second country to offer high-speed railway transportation when they introduced their speed train in 1981 at operating up to speeds of 198 miles per hour. In 2008, China began offering high-speed rail transportation reaching max speeds of 217 miles per hour and has more track mileage than the rest of the world combined. I think part of that probably has to do with the size of the country and the amount of people that travel on train. The U.S. is just now getting started to introduce their high-speed railways and are currently in the process of building more. Our railways have few express tracks reaching top speeds of 150 through limited parts of the track. So we are a little bit behind as far as high-speed railways, but we are investing more of our time and money into building more of these modes of transportation. As of right now, you can see the United States has 33 miles of high-speed track, which is currently from Miami to West Palm Beach, Florida, and they are in the works of extending it to reach Orlando. We also have 120 miles under construction, and that includes a track from San Francisco to Los Angeles. They're also working on building a track from Dallas to Houston, and there is talk that in 2024 there will be a 185-mile track from Las Vegas to Southern California. Now we're going to move on to vehicles. Back to the military, we use ground transportation every day. We have high mobility, multi-purpose vehicles, which include your Hummers, and then we also have our armored security, which mainly includes tanks. We have heavy tactical trucks, which are meant for transporting our armored security vehicles or tanks. And then we have our amphibious assault vehicles, which are made both for land and water. The most common means of transportation in the United States today is by car or bus. The number of people driving to work is declining due to the increase of mass transportation, walking, and biking. The U.S. uses almost 5 times the amount of gasoline and travels twice as far than any other country worldwide. And this is a graph showing, if you look at the bottom, the United States, the average cost of gasoline is $2.54, and then the annual amount of income spent on gasoline is $3.18, which is higher than any other country. And then also vehicle kilometers traveled per capita is 13,000, which again is higher than any country. In 2007, 85% of Americans drove to work. In 2018, 77% of Americans drove to work. Mass transit, walking, and biking have increased, and that is why you would see a decrease in the amount of Americans driving to work. Now we're going to talk a little bit about our watercraft. Water vessels in the military, our main ones are going to be our aircraft carriers, which are vessels where airplanes can land and take off from. They're the largest vessel in our military fleet, standing 20 stories above water and 1,092 feet in length from bow to stern. They were first used during combat in the beginning of World War II and can carry up to 6,000 crew members. Then we have our submarines, which are vessels that are capable of independent operations underwater. There are 12 U.S. Navy submarines active today, and they are used for attack and stealth. And every submarine in our fleet today is nuclear powered. We then have tankers, which are large vessels used to carry fuel to other vessels. This would be the vessels that would carry gasoline to aircraft carriers or submarines to refuel them in the middle of the ocean without having to make landfall. We then have our destroyers, which are short-range attack vessels, and the U.S. currently has 65 in our fleet, and they are meant to attack, protect, defend, and for quick maneuverability. Then we have our patrol ships, which are smaller vessels designed for coastal duties. They're fast and small. They are the fastest and smallest vessels in the fleet. The main purpose is to monitor the ocean's coastline and shallow waters. They are equipped to attack, defend, and patrol. So other types of watercraft. There are going to be boats built for speed and some meant to sail with the tides. Boats for fishing and some for shrimping. There's going to be yachts and massive cruise ships. Cargo ships to transport from continent to continent. And then you also have your smaller personal boats like ski boats and jet skis as well. So how do these affect our environment? The greenhouse gas emissions for the U.S. in the last 30 years have increased at an average annual rate of 0.4%. Transportation emissions have increased by twice that fast, and in 2012 was responsible for 28% of all U.S. CO2 emissions. The effects that aircrafts have, International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, documented that 4.1 billion people flew at some point in the year of 2017. There are websites such as FlightTrader24.com that you can record every plane in flight at any given time of the day. And they recorded the busiest day of travel in March 2018, recording 202,157 flights in a single day. That equals 140 planes taking off each minute. Between 2009 and 2013, the industry's carbon footprint grew from 3.9 to 4.5 gigatons of CO2 each year. Aircraft engine emissions consist of 70% exhaust and 30% water vapor. And NASA states in a 2010 report that 25% of airplane emissions come from landing and taking off. The effects that railroads have on the environment is a lot less. Out of the sources of transportation, they have the least amount of impact on our environment. They still produce carbon dioxide and nitrogen dioxide emissions just like any other method of travel, but just less. Passenger railway transportation is 9% of our global transportation services. However, it only accumulates to 1% of the energy used worldwide. The vehicle effects on the environment are a little bit different. Ground transportation is the leading threat for pollution emissions. There are 4 major pollutants that are emitted from vehicles: carbon monoxide, which is extremely dangerous to inhale; hydrocarbon, which is a toxic compound of hydrogen and carbon; nitrogen oxide, which is a harmful gas emitted when fuel burns; and particulate matter, which are small particles of foreign substance that can damage the human lungs.